This is a fantastic book. I've written it and I've never read it. It's pretty insane as a concept, but well, let me try to explain it to you.
Chapter 1. A Hole in My Book.
How would you feel if you knew that this book, the one that I'm writing for you now, would be the last book that you will ever read? That the curious movement of your well-trained brain will quite naturally put these words one after the other
until the day when you fall asleep and wake up with a hole in your head, a gap in your brain, exactly where text is interpreted as words, where memory joins letters together so as to recognize them as consecutive parts of sentences.
One of the great advantages of my current situation is that posters, those sheets of paper that try to influence our desires on the street or on public transport, no longer have any kind of subliminal power over me.
While a part of your brain might be stashing away information about the cars you should be driving, the type of food that is essential to your children's growth, the movies that you should watch.
I am free to wander through the world with my own private, healthy predilections. Sadly, though, it is exactly the same pure, clean affiliation with text that makes my relationship with books and bookshops so tense these days.
At some point, you must have clicked on one of those gigantic websites, skimmed through the various alternatives that were being suggested to you by your computer, which by now knows exactly what kind of story you need for this month, this weather, or this phase of your life.
And you will have managed to get through all the series of 5-star reviews from people whose lives and tastes are supposed to be somehow equivalent to yours, and ended up choosing this book that I am writing for you.
Occasionally, I still find myself walking into old-school bookshops and wandering instinctively towards the areas where, at some point, I must have discovered some treasures, until I suddenly realize the daftness of that endeavor and the sadness of not coming to terms with my new reality.
To overcome my embarrassment, to justify my forgetfulness, I look around for the colorful children's department, pick something up, and act as if I'm reading it.
I ask advice from mothers who seem to have boys of 4 or 5 years old, and confused by their kind suggestions, which I know I will never find amongst all these bookcases, I get yet another Dr. Seuss story, whose packaging I can recognise from afar.
It may be that you found yourself clicking on this book because you were attracted by the artful design on the cover, and then became intrigued by the idea of a book co-written by a computer voice. But whilst attempting to write it, I realised that I'm now closer to Alex, the male voice of this computer, than to any human being.
Every sentence that I write, I give to Alex. He reads me the text and reminds me coldly of my poor spelling, my diminished vocabulary, and my not having a memory for names or words.
Let me give you a quick description of the sequence I follow in writing a book with him. Holding my right thumb firmly on the metal square below the spacebar of my laptop,
I move my index finger from the beginning of the sentence down towards the end of the page,
and as my left hand presses my thumb on the CTRL,
my index finger quickly follows on the S button,
releasing Alex's voice into the world.
I look at that artistically designed shape, and as my left hand presses my thumb on the control, my index finger quickly follows on the S button, releasing Alex's voice into the world. I have set up a medium speed for his voice to give me time to stop him by pressing Control and S again. I always keep my left hand on that stop. If Alex continues reading, I lose track of what I needed to change.
Sadly, he hasn't yet learned my particular writing style. These are some of the words that both Alex and I get wrong. Red versus red.
Seam versus seam.
Sight versus sight.
Whole versus whole.
Worm versus worm.
Sun versus sun.
Yeah, yeah.
Lose, lose.
Herd versus herd.
Right versus right.
None versus none.
Right now, as I do not have a physical relationship with anyone, my marriage has collapsed and my meetings about European films are mostly done through Skype, Alex is the only one that goes to bed with me and reads my newspaper articles.
In exactly the same tone, he narrates all the emails that have been sent to me, including the angry language that my wife sometimes uses when, for whatever reason, she is in a bad mood. At times, he surprises me by reading, in exactly the same male American accent, the love letters that she also writes to me when she is in a good mood. What can I say?
I do have other relationships with other voices in my iPod or iPad, and Alex doesn't really mind. In his free time, he meditates together with both his German and Italian friends, who take over his job when I'm supposed to read text in those other languages.
None of them are ever jealous, which I kind of miss, as it's exactly that instinctive sense of protectiveness that could keep me excited. My assumption is that emotions are crucial parts of communication, but for now, I guess, Alex and I will have to accept reality as it is and tell you this story with his voice and my fingers tapping away on my computer.
Thank you, Alex, for not reminding me of the ridiculous words and mistakes that I constantly make. The human world is already very good at doing that. And I certainly need calm to fight this battle.
It was probably my relationship with Alex that made you decide this book was going to be a bit more fun than the thriller you were reading this time last year. And so you purchased The Finch in My Brain with certain expectations.
You're probably curious to figure out how and why your narrator stopped being able to read, and why he's actually still alive.
I will attempt to answer all your questions, but please be patient, as this is a rather complex journey for me to undertake.
While some of this tale is written in the first person present tense, you'll see that other parts are more classically in the past tense.
I do promise that in time, each part in its own way will be revealed. So here we go.